starts with Xfinity. Because when you get Xfinity Internet and mobile together, you can save up to $400 a year.
Good evening and welcome to the Newtown Township Board of Supervisors meeting for August 25th, 2021. I will, as I have been doing since this awful pandemic, will just read something that we could keep in our memory. I'd like to say, let us remember all those who have been affected by this horrible virus and their families, and those on the front lines, the doctors, nurses, EMTs, police, fire, and all who answer their call of duty unselfishly. Those everyday important essential workers, the garbage collectors, supermarket workers, food servers, just to name a few. And here in our township, our management, our administrative staff, public works, together they keep our township running. Let us support our local businesses the best that we can, and please do not forget to be generous. Most of all, treat people with respect and kindness, even those you may disagree with. As we start to come out of this pandemic, together as a community, we will be stronger when this is over. If we could just bow our heads for a second. You can stand with the board for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Lewis, I assume there's no changes to the agenda?
There's no changes, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. No special actions. We'll go into our first session of public comment. Anyone who has a comment to make that is not on the agenda, please feel free.
Turn your microphone on.
Hi, my name's Ellen Snyder. I'd like to add my voice to those calling for equal participation for committee members and members of the public in general to be able to have their voices heard during supervisors' meetings and committee meetings. We must make the option for hybrid meetings a reality. The COVID crisis brought light to this issue, which we hadn't been paying attention to. The committees that report to the supervisors are generally volunteers that commit their time and effort to the betterment of our township. Some members of these committees are immunocompromised, and it would put their lives in actual danger to be amongst other people at certain times. At other times, people might have other issues that make them unable to attend their normal committee meetings, or members of the public that are interested. There is no excuse not to make these meetings available to everyone, and as I understand it, it would not require a large financial investment in order to do so. It must be done quickly so that we can go about our business in a manner that is consistent as possible. New subject. Climate change is the single biggest threat to humanity at this time. From small towns to big cities, we have to make it a priority. There are changes that we can make here in Newtown Township to make a difference. Nothing we use for a few minutes should be allowed to potentially pollute our environment for hundreds of years. Implementing local policies to address this chronic pollution problem being caused by single-use plastics, like bags or foam containers, are proven to be some of the best ways of cutting off the source of pollution. Many plastics are not recyclable in the curbside programs and do not degrade in landfills. Much of this waste instead slowly degrades into microplastics that enter our air, food, and water. Incinerated plastics lead to air pollution and toxic byproducts. Landfills cause water pollution and litter, which clogs oceans, rivers, streams, communities, and even open space. A bipartisan group of state, county, and local municipal officials across the nation have already implemented policies to address single-use plastics and the pollution that it creates. Local Class II municipalities with single-use plastic ordinances include Narberth, Westchester, Salisbury, and Northampton. Local Class II municipalities in progress include Doylestown and Doylestown Borough, and the township. A 2020 survey of municipal officials by Penn Environment Research and Policy Center found that 80% wanted to pass ordinances to consider binding legislation similar to the townships I just mentioned. 90% were to take action. I believe we must move quickly with regards to actions we can take here in our township. I suggest we survey our local businesses and see if they are willing to partner with local government to reduce and eliminate single-use plastics. I also think we should initiate a survey of our community, imitating the actions of other townships in this regard. We must pass a resolution by our supervisors. And lastly, we should acknowledge local businesses as they sign on to participate in these actions. Green infrastructure is just as important for our future as plastics reduction. The Sierra Club's Ready for 100 campaign advocates for an equitable and affordable energy system powered by 100% clean, renewable energy by 2050. Communities across the United States are committed to leading the transition to 100% clean, renewable sources of energy like wind, solar, and battery storage. Again, it starts right here in our local community. All township buildings should be solar equipped, and this is already being done in local Class II townships. The supervisors in West Rock Hill Township realized how important this is and led the way in their community, realizing the priority right now, which is doing their best to mitigate climate change as best they can. We love our open space in this township. To prevent the collapse of our ecosystem, we need space for native plants and trees. Bats, birds, frogs, and bees are threatened because their natural habitats are severely limited now. We need to stipulate that portions of open space must contain meadows. Retention basins can easily be converted to meadows in most cases. I hope the supervisors will listen to their own environmental advisory committee as we present these facts to you. And I hope that Newtown Township will take responsible actions in this regard. Thank you for listening.
Anyone else for public comment?
Mr. Chair, I received a comment from Kirsten Zoffel, who cannot attend this meeting in person due to her immunocompromised medical state, and I request that I be able to read her comment so it's in the public record.
Sure, go ahead.
My name is Kirsten Zolfo, and I live on Greenbrier Lane here in Newtown. For the past 3 years, I have volunteered on the Newtown Township Planning Commission. I also have a chronic medical condition that leaves me immunocompromised. I am under explicit instructions from the specialist who oversees my treatment that I am to avoid indoor spaces with groups of people, especially those with unknown vaccine status. This is why I am not delivering this public comment in person. During 2020 and the first half of 2021, the Planning Commission held its meetings via Zoom, and I had no difficulty participating. But the return to in-person meetings this year did not go smoothly. The only option the township has provided for those of us on the Planning Commission who must participate remotely is an old office phone equipped with an obsolete speakerphone. This hardware slowly deteriorates in quality as it is used until about 45 minutes into any call, when it stops producing human language and instead emits a stream of unintelligible blurps and squeaks. It is an inadequate option. Other smaller neighboring communities have managed to upgrade their municipal facilities in order to provide hybrid meetings with audio and visual capabilities. We only have an inadequate broken speakerphone here in Newtown for the Planning Commission. Newtown Township has legal obligations under the American with Disabilities Act, but more important than that, as a board, you have the duty to the dozens of volunteers who collectively give hundreds, if not thousands of hours of their own time each year on this township's boards, councils, and commissions to ensure the community thrives. We deserve better from you than a broken phone and more from you than months of delay. Please implement a phased solution to solve this problem. Please replace the existing obsolete phone with a new model that is designed for conference call uses to serve as a temporary solution as you determine the technology upgrades needed in this facility to fulfill your obligations under the ADA. I know I am not the only volunteer who has had to endure this obstacle in the past few months. Please take these steps necessary to ensure we can safely continue to give our time to our Newtown community. End of quote.
Thank you, John. Anyone else for public comment?
John DeApril, Newtown Grant, biggest and the best. Few things. We feel sorry for Mrs. Zolfa, immunity compromised and all that stuff. But here I am, over 70 years old. I don't know what kind of compromise she has, but I have many. Disabled license plate. I just don't get that by knowing somebody in the state or Democrat or something like that. It's a shame. I know that when there was vacancy on the supervisors board, she put in for it, got interviewed and all that stuff. Does that mean that if she would have got picked, she wouldn't be here tonight? It's crazy. You bring up the ADA. You look at the ADA. There's a lot of different things in there that you got to have and you can get away with. So people like throwing the ADA out. I used to be a union rep in one of my jobs, and we deal with it all the time. As far as the hybrid meetings, no. You look at the Zoom meetings we had. The managers probably got the figures, but I attended most of them on Zoom, and the most I counted the people were there were 18, and I think 9 of them were builders. They wanted something. So, the hybrid meetings, it's a waste of time when you only have 18 people the most, which they would have been in the room if you would have had a live meeting, most of them. Anyway, I don't see these people's names up on the Zoom thing. I looked at the names. Like I said, I counted them. Why? Why go through that? If they can't get off the TV, they can watch it on the TV. If they can't get off their couch and come to a live meeting, they don't deserve any comments. We never, for all the 20 years I've been coming to these meetings, never, the old building and everything, never stopped somebody by sending a letter in to read their comment. Never did that. So if they have a problem, can't get off the couch, or they have some kind of deficiency, send it in. Johnny takes them right in live over here on his computer. Don't need it. Don't need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Good evening, and thank you for your service. I'm Terry Christensen. I chair the board at Friends Villages. I want to add my voice to those who are asking for hybrid meetings. We have been undertaking a strategic planning process, and one of the things we have discovered in our research is that people who live purposeful, engaged lives have much better health outcomes. Chronic disease disappears, they do much better. Unfortunately, many of our residents, let me rephrase that. Many of our residents have a broad and deep wealth of expertise and intelligence. They're unfortunately, they can watch what's happening in a passive sense, but it's hard for them to participate. We're trying to get them to participate, to become more involved, to become more engaged, to become a bigger part of their community. That's why the trail that goes past our campus on Darlington Road is so important to me and to our residents. We'd like to be able to participate in the Board of Supervisors meetings as well. And I'm encouraging you to move forward with that. Thank you very much.
Mr. Christensen, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You came here with, I think his name is Twain.
Twain.
Why is he with you tonight? Can you tell us?
Yeah, Twain is my guide dog. I used to be a sea captain 25 years ago, little tiny Clatsop Community College in Astoria, Oregon. We became the first place in the nation other than a full four-year maritime academy where people got sea service credit preparing for a license, and I was the one who made that happen. And then in the course of 8 weeks, a career I'd spent 30 years developing evaporated because of this disease. So the woman of my dreams was kind enough to drive me here tonight. Nobody's anxious to see either Twain or I behind the wheel of a car.
Right.
And I'll be taking an Uber home.
But I understand the last time you were here, you had to leave earlier than you wanted because you were afraid there wouldn't be any Uber drivers to take you back home.
That's correct. That's
Thank
correct. That happens from time to time. As a matter of fact, I had a little dust up with cancer. I had a power pump removed because I'm not taking chemotherapy anymore. And I was trying to take an Uber from St. Mary Medical Center and get a Starbucks and surprise the woman of my dreams, and I was refused service by an Uber driver because I had a guide dog.
Wow. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your time.
Anyone else have public comment?
Good evening. My name is Kenneth Lee. I live in 140 Commonwealth Drive, Newtown, Crossing. I lived for 40 years. But suddenly, 3 weeks ago, township put the no parking sign. There's a one-way street, Commonwealth Drive, a one-way street, and fire hydrant over there. But they put the no parking sign within 15 feet, within the 15 feet. The monster, 12 feet. I live in a small townhouse. That interfere my cutting grass. Mr. Mika Lewis was at my house. He saw. I try my house make it beautiful, my neighborhood, and I keep the law. Fire hydrant, I've never seen the fire hydrant and another no parking sign. That's the traffic law. When we take a driving test, within 15 feet, we should not park. Several years ago, I had a party, and my friend parked a little close, the fire hydrant. Police live around me, my neighbor. He put the ticket. So I paid him, my very embarrassing situation. You know, I come out early in the morning, I check, and nobody parked closely. That's a traffic law. And Mr. Lewis was there, and he saw. And before the meeting, I met him again. He said that he's going to remove. Thank God. So I would greatly appreciate your further dedication and thoughtfulness, care. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just make sure your friend doesn't park in front of the fire hydrant again.
Pardon me?
I just said, just make sure your friend doesn't park in front of the fire hydrant again.
No more.
All right.
Yeah, no more.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none. No minor approvals. Reports of committees, boards, and commissions. I see Mr. Fiddler in the audience, Planning Commission.
Good evening. Alan Fiddler, Chairman of the Newtown Township Planning Commission. Here to give you a synopsis on our August 17, 2021 meeting. We did not have a quorum, as is our policy. Any recommendations that come out of our discussions that evening are an informal recommendation to the board. We had zoning hearing board application for Ryan and Kate Strong at 9 Crocus Lane. Mr. and Mrs. Strong were seeking variances for a rear yard setback of 15 feet where 25 feet is required, and the 32% impervious surface area where 30% is the maximum permitted, to purposely replace an aging deck with a partial screened enclosed deck. The open portion of the deck complies with the ordinance. The Commission again recommends that the board support this application. Our second item of business that evening was a Jmzo Amendment. This amendment is a correction to the recently reviewed Scott Farm Amendment. It removed the reference to the use B14, which had been previously removed from the CM zoning in 2009. But somehow that had not been deleted when preparing this new amendment. The Commission recommends that the supervisors support the new amendment. Our last item of business that evening was the Bucks County Planning Commission proposal for the consideration of changes to the LI and OLI district. The Commission was very pleased with this proposal, and it looks forward to working with the Bucks County Planning Commission as we consider updating our business common zoning. The members did suggest that the supervisors add to the proposal a provision to meet with the Planning Commission and the Economic Development Committee to discuss items, and then again to review their work and perhaps hold a joint work session with the EDC, PC, and the supervisors. We also noted that the proposal does not specifically reference the Newtown Business Commons, and we would recommend that at some point in time, the Newtown Business Commons Association be included in these discussions. So it was a general consensus informally that maybe the proposal may need to look at maybe 2 to 4 additional joint sessions with these various committees to get their input to hopefully streamline the process, so when it comes in front of the Bucks County Planning Commission and the supervisors, all input is included. So that basically concludes my report.
Any questions for Alan? Alan, I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
Well, please, after you, Mr. Chairman.
No, I was just going to say, you had 4 members, missing 1 for a quorum. There's 8 now. There's 1 missing.
Yes.
Was there any particular reason? I know one because of, I'll call,
We had
challenges with health.
We had 2 people that expressed a reluctance to meet in person because of their compromised health situation.
Okay.
That's 2. The third had a medical excuse. So we were down to 3 members, and basically,
And you're still looking for one to replace a vacancy?
we certainly are.
Okay.
I mean, and,
So, I mean, just to call out to the residents out there, anyone who would like to be on the Planning Commission, submit a letter of intent or resume to Olivia. And, I'm sure Alan's a great mentor and teacher. He'll teach you everything there is to know about planning.
I'm a short timer, Phil, you know that. So,
Any other questions for Mr. Fiddler?
Mr. Fiddler, I was just going to ask, thank you for your synopsis. In terms of where we are with the Bucks County Planning Commission after your review, what are your next steps to talk with them next about what you would like to see specifically? Or are we to reach out, have our township manager reach out?
And again, it was our informal discussion that revolved around addressing to the Bucks County Planning Commission as the Board of Supervisors, can we have some additional participation in committee meetings with the EDC Planning Commission and the Bucks, or the Newtown Business Commons Association in a joint session at a Planning Commission meeting or EDC meeting, and then come back with some of the suggestions in a form that can be digested by the Board of Supervisors, and consider a work session with Bucks County Planning Commission and interested parties to, move this forward. So, the proposal seemed reasonable, a lot lower than I would have anticipated. But then again, if you add a couple more meetings, it's going to cost a little bit more. But money well spent, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Mr. Lewis, you're going to reach out to?
I can, if that's the board.
Okay.
If the board is of a mind, I can reach out to Bucks County Planning Commission, ask them to amend that proposal per the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Any objections from the board?
None here.
Go ahead.
I'll do so.
Dennis?
I just have a real quick question, Alan.
Sure, Dennis.
Sometimes the planning commission will address traffic issues. I asked because you're down a member, and I had a couple of people expressing interest in the traffic committee, which we're not going to do right now, but maybe the planning commission would do
Well,
that.
Again, any proposed changes that may be considered will have a traffic impact, and getting responsible parties involved in the process early on and make the community aware that, yes, if you do add some changes, it could impact traffic. But then again, the Planning Commission always follows SALDO, and the requirements for improvements to streetscape as part of land development is a component. So we'll have that opportunity, but getting that input. And again, I think the importance is looking at things that may work in a scale that the township is, acceptable with, and yet does that scale provide enough economic stimulus for people to come in and consider investing in changing an existing property to the new proposed permitted uses. So, yeah, it's going to be a big process, and I commend everybody for their willingness to step up and be part of this.
Thanks. I'll be there.
Any other questions? Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
evening.
Okay. Board members' reports. Chairman, I don't have any report tonight. I will go to our Vice Chair, Mr. Fisher.
I have 2 items, and there seems to be a running theme this evening. The Finance Committee met last evening. There was no quorum. We did, however, have somewhat of a hybrid meeting. So we had a Zoom link for the committee members, and and a number of us were also here present. So even with that, we didn't have a quorum, but we had a liaison from the Economic Development Committee and another visitor, so that was good. We talked a little bit about ARP, American Relief Plan, and Mr. Lewis, are there any, or Mr. Sanders, there's no new guidelines that we know of? We're still waiting for the finals.
That's correct.
Thanks. We looked at the general fund after 6 months of operations, and we looked at maybe making some recommendations to the supervisors in an upcoming work session or whenever it's feasible for the rest of the Board of Supervisors. So that was our agenda last night. The other thing I wanted to just comment on real quickly was the Swamp Road construction that was done on time, on schedule, finished ahead of schedule, I think, by a day. That was good. But in the middle of replacing the gas line there by the community college in Helen Randall Park, it occurred to a number of my Swamp Road neighbors that wasn't there a bridge reconstruction project coming our way. And there is. I spoke to Representative PennDOT, and Perry Warren's office was also getting in touch with them about when the bridge construction was going to take place, because there was some conflicting dates. But as it turns out, and I got an email back from Judith Arena, and the project's being preliminary engineering now, and there'll be construction in 2024. That's what they're planning. It's been pushed back before. But the bridge that we would be replacing is the stone bridge at Tamara Farm. That's what I call it, but it's where the stream comes under there at the bottom of the hill. So we'll just keep an eye on that. And if people wanted to make a comment about the plan is a comment period that ends August 30th, so you still have 3 or 4 days to go online and do that. There is a connection on the township website, right in our homepage. So you can go on the homepage of the township website, click on it, and you can see what the project is and leave your comments. That's all I got.
Mr. Mack.
Yes, as the liaison to the Council Rock School Board, I just wanted to report that the Council Rock School Board has called a special meeting for August 26th, that's tomorrow, to address the latest school opening guidance from the Bucks County Health Department on mask wearing. The meeting is scheduled to begin at 7 p.m. at the Chancellor Center in the borough. And the Bucks County has recommended that schools begin the fall semester with a mask requirement. It should also be noted that the latest report from the American Academy of Pediatrics and Children's Hospital Association says that child cases of COVID-19 have increased exponentially, with more than a 4-fold increase in the past month. And the Superintendent Fraser said the primary purpose of this special board meeting will be to discuss how the latest guidance from the Bucks County Health Department might impact the Council Rock School District Health and Safety Plan, and then vote accordingly. This meeting will be broadcast simultaneously on cable TV. I didn't get the channel number, and on YouTube, but no comments are taken through YouTube, so you would have to attend to make comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have the Park and Rec report for today, August 25th. Registered today for the following upcoming programs, which are starting soon. There's Great Yoga, Senior Fitness, Acrylic Pouring, and Schools Out Art Workshop. The Newtown Township newsletter will be in mailboxes, should be in mailboxes the second week of September. The PDF online version is available within the next week. Follow the Park and Rec on social media for updates about programs and park happenings at Newtown Fun. That's the @ Newtown Fun. And don't forget, pre-registration is required for all Parks and Rec programs. You can register online at newtownfun.com or call the office at 215-968-2800, extension 239 during office hours. And then finally, the Park and Rec Department wanted to say thank you to all those residents and neighbors that spent their summer with them, whether through our day camps, specialty camps, or single-day programs. We're thankful for your support in recreation. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Oxley?
Nothing to report this evening.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, there's no public hearing tonight. Land development. Arcadia at Newtown Holdings LP, Newtown Bypass and Buck Road, final subdivision land development. Mr. Sander, would you like to read the motion for tonight?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. For the board's consideration, it would be a motion to grant final plan approval for Arcadia Holdings LP for a residential housing development on approximately 20.117 acres located on the western side of the Newtown Bypass north of Buck Road on 3 parcels of land that are to be consolidated to create the proposed development site. These parcels are zoned R2, high-density residential zoning district, and the applicant intends to construct 60 single-family detached dwellings with associated improvements. This project is subject to the conditions set forth in the stipulation and settlement agreement between the applicant and Newtown Township, executed by the parties on February 24th, 2021, and approved by the Court of Common Pleas of Bucks County. Approval is granted subject to the following conditions. First, the applicant shall comply with the following review letters to the extent governed by the settlement agreement to the satisfaction of the respective township consultants. First, a review letter of CKS Engineers dated May 27th, 2021. Second, a review letter of Remington and Vernick Engineers dated May 25th, 2021. Third, a review letter from Remington and Vernick Engineers, traffic review letter dated May 25th, 2021. Fourth, a review letter of the Bucks County Planning Commission dated June 1st, 2021. 2, the site layout shall be consistent with the revised site plan submitted by the applicant to the township on August 20th, 2021. 3, the specifications and physical construction for the sidewalks shall be reviewed by the township engineer and approved in writing prior to construction beginning. 4, the homeowners association declaration shall include a plan showing where parking is not permitted in the development. 5, the applicant must provide any and all documents related to a homeowners association prior to the issuance of the first certificate of occupancy. 6, the applicant must provide updated correspondence from the Newtown Bucks County Joint Municipal Authority that it will provide required wastewater treatment for this development. 7, the applicant must provide updated documentation that it has secured water service for this community. 8, all fees and costs due and owing to Newtown Township for reviews and any other reimbursable expenses must be paid in full prior to the signing of final plans and their being recorded as governed by the provisions of the settlement agreement. And finally, 9, prior to the signing of final plans and their being recorded, the applicant shall obtain all permits and approvals required from all agencies with jurisdictions over the development and shall submit proof of same to the township except as otherwise governed by the settlement agreement. And that is the motion, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, do I have such a motion?
So moved.
Well, Dennis first, David second. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any questions from the board on this motion?
I have a question with regard to fulfillment of the stipulation and settlement agreement, specifically with regard to the request made of PennDOT regarding a point of access study I know that the applicant has submitted a access evaluation process report, but this does not mean that it is a point of access study, and I think that was mentioned in the stipulation. Can you discuss that a little bit, Mr. Sander, where that is? what
Yeah,
that means?
and thank you, Mr. Mack. And I think Mr. Mack's question goes to Section 7 of the settlement agreement, where the applicant agrees and to our knowledge has certainly submitted an access evaluation process report to PennDOT listing the access options in the order of preference, and PennDOT has responded to that. However, Section 7B on page 15 of the settlement agreement at sub Roman numeral 2 does require the township and Arcadia to cooperate in the preparation of a point of access, or POA, study for submission to PennDOT and the Federal Highway Administration for the bypass access at the applicant's sole expense. And I think the question that Mr. Mack has, Mr. Van Louveny, is what is the status of the preparation of the point of access study and its submission to PennDOT?
What was excuse me, what was submitted was the first step in that process and the mandatory step, which was the request for a point of access, request report requesting a point of access study. That request was denied, and as we understand it, and we've provided, I believe I provided a copy to you, Mr. Sander, copies from the PennDOT Design Manual, Part 1X, Appendix Q, which governs point of access studies, that request report for point of access is the first step in the process. And the manual goes on to indicate that if that request is denied, and in this case, the review letter that we've received back from PennDOT indicated that that request was denied, that is, let me see if I can point out to you where.
I looked at the review, the letter from PennDOT, and there was no such mention of the point of access request.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there was, Mr. Mack.
Can you find that for me, please?
Yes, I can. I can tell you exactly where it was. On the second page of the July 2nd review, under general comments, the comment number 1 states, due in part to the unacceptable weaving condition that would be created by allowing an access from the site directly onto SR 0322, parentheses, Newtown Bypass, which would require a break in the limited access right-of-way of SR 0322, comma, the point of access study request is denied.
I see. I missed that. I'm sorry to say.
That's all right.
But however, going forward with this process, I guess that's completely out of the question. I know that the residents would like to see more data upon which PennDOT denied some of these things. They just, made these comments without any data, which I supposed the point of access study would provide. So I think that was, what do you call that? Unilateral or unscientific by the PennDOT. There must be a better term for it. I don't know what the best term would be for that. But it doesn't seem that they're playing fair, if you ask me.
And we talked
Just my opinion.
We talked about that at some point last meeting, and
I can't remember all that last meeting. Is like, oh my God, I wish it never happened. So,
right. Let me just point out that obviously the PennDOT Design Manual is what governs the process. As mandated by the stipulation, McMahon Associates, certainly a reputable transportation engineering firm, prepared the request for point of access and included it in its comprehensive study. That's what was required. That was reviewed by.
Okay, I'm not saying you didn't.
We did what we can do. After that, I think the idea was that the public wanted a seat at the table, and the stipulation provides that seat at the table.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying you didn't
All
give
right,
it your college best try, whatever you call it. And, it remains to be seen. I believe some residents here might have some comments about meeting with PennDOT, so we'll wait to hear more about that.
And you'll recall that Mr. Duckworth repeated last week what we had said when we were negotiating the stipulation, and that is Arcadia would love to have a direct access to the bypass. There's no question about that.
Right.
So there's no effort to short-circuit that process.
But I mean, in the going forward, I assume you would continue to have that opinion and help try to move that forward the best way that you can. I don't know what can be done.
Mr. Duckworth is shaking his head affirmatively. That's up to him. So,
Okay.
Yeah, I think part of the problem was that the studies that might be required if PennDOT had said, we'll leave the possibility open, have not yet been submitted. And there are no weaving studies. They looked at the plan you submitted, which was the aerial photo showing how the access would come out to the bypass, and said, we think there's too much weaving. Well, based on what? There's no numbers in their decision. There's no, we need 1,500 feet, you're providing us 500 feet. There's none of the empirical data that would show the Board of Supervisors and the residents why they made their decision and what it was based on. And I think that if it's possible to get those studies in front of PennDOT, that might go a long way toward maybe getting this done.
well, PennDOT looked at that access more than once. It wasn't just this study that was submitted. We had tried that effort in connection with, I think it was Arcadia 2, where we did propose on the plan the access to the bypass. And again, there was a scoping application prepared, there were studies prepared, and again, PennDOT, based on information, presumably, David, some of it being in-house information that they have, but there were certainly traffic counts and that sort of thing submitted at that point in time. PennDOT has consistently said, or Mr. Haney has said, I assume he speaks for PennDOT, that this is not an alternative that PennDOT will consider. Beyond that, our traffic engineer, discussing with Mr. Duckworth, says there's nothing I can do further on this process, and for that reason, we felt, and we agreed the best hope was to get the public involved
Right.
and the government.
So, but the only data I've seen was from your traffic engineers that said there would practically be no delay with that access.
Which is why I'm assuming that PennDOT has data or policy.
You know what assume means?
I know, but what, I can't speak for Mr. Haney, and you're really taking him on tonight, I
Yeah,
think, more than
right.
you're taking Arcadia on, so.
No, I would agree with that.
Okay.
But the weaving, I don't know, that must be a technical term, but for the
Well, I think we know what it means. It means
All right,
somebody
let's-
comes
let's-
down on the left lane, they need to get to the right lane, and all of a sudden there's another movement
right.
coming.
I just want to get to the U-turn, which PennDOT loves. And we would, I was thinking that when trucks or other vehicles want to make that U-turn to go into Newtown or get to the bypass, now there are two ways they got to go. They either want to go on a bypass or they want to go straight. There's going to be some weaving with that U-turn. I don't care what you do there. So I don't know why PennDOT didn't mention weaving with the U-turn. I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer. Maybe our traffic engineer can weigh in a little bit on, the possibility of weaving at U-turns.
Are you asking the traffic engineer to weigh in?
Maybe. If you have something relevant to say that on the possibility of weaving in that may be involved with this U-turn option?
Well, I can't say, it is a technical term, right? There is such thing as a weave analysis, so you're probably familiar with the intersection criteria for highway capacity software, which assigns a letter grade to, delay. So there's a similar process for mid-block weaving sections. So it's based on volume, speeds, the number of traffic, moving left to right versus right to left, which would be, in this case, coming out of, the entrance, it creates a similar level of service or criteria that you can base on,
So can we assume, and I don't think it's true, yeah, PennDOT cannot possibly have any data regarding weaving on that U-turn because it hasn't been built yet. I mean, they have to do a different study considering what's going to be done with the improvements to analyze, whether or not weaving is a problem there. And I don't think that study has been done. So, they're basing it again on just, well, they don't like the other one, so we're going to stick with the U-turn, it sounds to me.
There was a lot of information submitted in the traffic impact study with respect to that movement. I don't know whether it was called a weaving analysis or not, but I do recall a level of service analysis on that U-turn movement that was submitted to PennDOT before it issued its review letter, probably in connection with Arcadia 3.
The level of service really means how long you have to wait at the red light or something like that. It has nothing to do with weaving.
No,
So
this gentleman just did.
So a weave analysis, it takes that same approach of putting it into an understandable level service, A, B, C, D, but it looks at density, roadway density, within that space of roadway, the number of vehicles you have, and it.
But it's
not necessarily a delay.
Right. It has nothing to do with delays or anything like that.
It has to do with density, the amount of vehicles within the space that you're
It
trying
has to
make
do
those
with safety.
maneuvers. Yes, in essence, yes.
Anyone else have a question?
I had like three related questions. They're all based on the August 20th, 21 amended plan.
The EMS, the plan submitted with the EMS response, correct?
Right, yes.
Right, that is the plan that I referred to in the motion.
I was going to ask you to clarify that.
Refers to that plan submitted. I don't know that it's dated that day, but it's submitted, and the township engineer has a copy of that and can probably cite to the last revised date. There's an information added in red on that plan.
Well, actually, David, there is. It's
Okay.
in red. It says right above the title block, revised for Board of Supervisors, August 20, 2021. And if I recall, the plan consisted of sheets C1.1 and C1.2. They both have that same revision noted in red.
And my question was around the flipping of the sidewalk. That's in that plan.
That's correct.
So then that provides a support for the outriggers of the fire truck. And the parking.
That was also addressed in the response letter.
Right.
And I believe the plan had indicated where the no parking signs were going to be put up too. I think that's all on there. And if you had a black and white copy of that plan instead of the color copy, it might have been hard for you to find them.
Right.
But the original was done in red, and that was what was reviewed by your EMS people.
And I think that's what Mr. Sanders was also covering with his condition around.
That's correct. That was my understanding of his condition.
Right. And then the last piece, I just wanted to confirm that on that design, that the trees were moved back from the curb into the front of the yard.
That is correct. From in between the sidewalk and the curb to behind the sidewalk was put flush with the curb. The idea there is no matter where you are, it would be possible to put the outriggers out on the fire truck without running into any conflicts.
Yes.
That was the reason that was done.
Those were my questions. I just wanted to make sure that it was.
It was uniform throughout the development at this
fire
point.
Safety.
Kyle, any questions?
Yeah, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned last meeting, there's a lot of unanswered questions regarding the PennDOT approval of access, in my opinion. And I thought we could get more information on it. Mr. Ancona from Newtown Crossing HOA, on behalf of all the other HOAs, Eagle Ridge, Crown Point, Liberty Square, over there, reached out to Mr. Haney from PennDOT and has scheduled a meeting September 7th or 9th. They have to figure out the date. I think any movement on this application is premature until that meeting. I think we should it was offered to have Board of Supervisors representation at that meeting, in addition to the HOAs and PennDOT. I think we should hold off until we have that meeting to get more answers from Mr. Haney on the decisions on the access to the Arcadia site.
Have you heard on that, Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me?
May I be heard on that point?
Absolutely.
One of the things that we commented on the last time, and it was central to the negotiation of the settlement agreement for Arcadia, was the bifurcation of the access point from the land development plan process. Nothing could be clearer in this stipulation, but that final plan moves separate and apart from the PennDOT issue. We have obligations to meet, which we did meet with respect to submitting the studies, but it's very clear that the final plan approval and the PennDOT process are moving in separate directions at separate times, and there would be absolutely no basis to deny action because of an access-related issue in this particular case.
Mr. Sander, am I mistaken, but if this goes to September, a possible deemed approval could be brought to us?
You are not mistaken about that, Mr. Chairman. The expiration date for the board to take action on the final subdivision plan and land development plan is August 31st. If formal action is not taken on or before August 31st, the final plan will be deemed approved as submitted, and the applicant will be able to proceed to develop that pursuant to that plan, not subject to any of the conditions that were read in the record this evening.
So if it goes to a deemed approval, whatever you propose right now is basically null and void?
And condition-wise, that was read in the motion, that's correct.
Okay. I just had a couple quick questions on the right-in, right-out off of the bypass. And I don't know if your traffic engineer had studied this or not, but there are two access points similar northbound. One being I think the Claudwell building now. It's been numerous types of building, but originally I call it the Brandywine building. And there is a right-in, right-out off of the bypass into their parking lot and out of their parking lot, basically to relieve any kind of traffic at Lindenhurst Road. Now, PennDOT had to approve that. I mean, I don't know if the engineer knows this answer or...
Let me tell you what I think the answer is, and I could be certain stand corrected. My understanding is that that building is along the non-limited access portion of the bypass, and the rules are different between the limited access portion of the bypass and the non-limited access portion.
Okay. And if that's the case, it can be approved and done at such a...
Again, Mr. Calabro, that is my understanding. I like you and like Mr. Mack, am not a traffic engineer.
Okay.
But I've been through this a few times, and I do know that there is a differentiating point, and I believe that it is before the Brandywine site, it becomes a non-limited access point.
Well,
That's the differentiation. You have differentiations in your sign regulations. You have a lot of things call out the difference between the limited and non-limited access.
well, there's another access point further down the road, and I'll call that the Council Rock St. Andrews turnoff. Would you consider that to be the same as the Brandywine building?
I'm not considering anything. I'm familiar with the differentiation there. The Council Rock access, if I recall correctly, was built into the original plans for the bypass. I don't know the history, but same as the underpass between the high school and the old junior high school was part of the original bypass plan to facilitate the connection. I don't know the particulars of each and every one of those points that you're making, but...
Okay. Well, I'm just curious if that's something that should have been addressed by the engineers. I'll put both our traffic engineer and your traffic engineer, because these are both similar turnoffs. And wouldn't they cause some sort of weaving? I know you're not a traffic engineer. I'm not a traffic engineer. We do have traffic engineers here. and maybe they could address that, is this Mr. Cunningham or someone from Cunningham? Can he
Well,
come
our
up?
traffic engineer was McMahon Associates.
Okay.
The township has a traffic engineer. The homeowners association may or may not choose to have the traffic engineer involved here. I can't speak to that issue either.
Well, I'm just curious as to why weaving would occur coming southbound, but weaving doesn't occur going northbound into, basically, it's a high school. I mean, as a matter of fact, there are softball fields right there that butt up against that turnoff. And there's a Catholic church, which on Sundays, all us good Catholics go to church, and we want to come out and get onto the bypass and go to the supermarket or something.
The only thing I know, Mr. Calabro, I think...
Yes, I'm just curious as to why they differentiated those
Well,
two.
let me say, that the only thing I can tell you is that access was placed there when the bypass was first constructed. It wasn't a request for a new access point once the bypass had already been constructed. That Stump Road access point has been there since day one, since that bypass opened, since the first phase of the bypass opened.
Okay. Any further questions from the board?
I have a couple. Mr. Van Louvenet, you mentioned something about Arcadia 2 just a little while ago. Were you the attorney on that?
On which?
Arcadia 2?
Well, I think that'd be fair to say, yes.
Okay. And what year was that?
And a few other applications with respect to this
You've been
property.
on this for a while? Okay.
Yes.
I love your persistence, excuse me. And what year was Arcadia 2?
I'm sorry?
What year was Arcadia 2?
2017, if I correct,
Okay.
but somewhere around there.
And how many homes were you proposing to build at that time?
More than this, I'm thinking 76, 84? 85, I'm sorry.
Okay. So you would probably end up with that type of U-turn situation as well?
Absolutely.
Okay.
All of the applications that we submitted were within the parameters imposed by the township on the development of the lot number 2 of the Reformed Church property.
Okay.
And the combination development is still within that parameter. That was on a condition of approval that you imposed on the approval of the land development plan for the Newtown Reformed Church and on the subdivision plan.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mr. Van Louvenet, it'd be fair to ask you, if this went to a deemed approval, what would happen?
What would happen?
Yeah. Fill me in.
We would still pursue outside agency permits and approvals. That's going to be required regardless of what development.
Now, from what Mr. Sanders said, you don't have to follow any of the conditions in his motion that was just made.
I mean, I'm not speculating there because I'm assuming the Board of Supervisors is going to follow the provisions of the stipulation and that we're not going to get there. I mean, that's, in my view, an academic discussion.
Well, I mean, come on, everybody takes worst-case scenarios into account. I'm sure you have, and Mr. Duckworth's had. I'm just asking for our betterment. What do you see that would happen if this went to a deemed approval?
That Arcadia would develop this plan.
Okay, in what process?
We'd have final plan approval. We'd pursue the outside agency permits. We'd go to court to get the deemed approval, the order from court. At the same time, we're processing these outside agency permits and approvals. And we'd probably seek sanctions against the township for delay of the project.
Okay. Thank you. I will open it to the public. Anyone want to come up and say something? Go, sure.
Thank you. I'm Peter Ancona. I'm a 36-year Newtown Crossing resident, Vice President of the Newtown Crossing Community Association, and just wanted to make some comments on the access portion of the settlement agreement. I understand and recognize that there are two separate processes that we're working in parallel here, and but I think they really do go hand in hand, and for that reason, I think it's important, as we're having the dialogue here, just to make some comments relative to my development as well as the other three homeowners associations that are in that same area, Eagle Ridge, Liberty Square and Crown Point. And I just wanted to make some remarks, read some written remarks, and then just comment a little bit on the discussion tonight, because I think there's some good dialogue, and ultimately, I do think there's a win-win here for everybody if we work collaboratively to work through this. So, and Kyle, I appreciate you mentioning the fact that we did hear today from Mr. Haney about having a meeting on the 7th or the 9th, and we'll work to make that happen. In addition to the representatives from the community associations and the Board of Supervisors, we would like to have participation from the Arcadia Green organization, because I think, you've done a lot of the legwork on the analysis so far for the access alternatives, and I think it's kind of part and parcel with the discussion here that you guys are going to be a part of the ultimate solution here. So just the written remarks here, the Arcadia development will be built, and per the settlement agreement, the access to the development is an issue separate from the approval of the subdivision. Where I'm concerned is that the focus so far seems to be on evaluating and modeling the alternatives as presented, and not necessarily finding the best way to solve both the safety and traffic flow problems. And a number of people on the board have talked about the safety issue. I think from the beginning that's been the biggest concern and issue. I think I'm fairly representing the residents of our developments in saying that that's our biggest concern. But as a traveling motorist, I certainly also appreciate the issues that we all have with getting through that intersection. So they're both important. So one of the things that PennDOT is apparently only looking at is what was presented as part of the McMahon study. And what they presented was 4 alternatives. And Mr. Mack, I appreciate you having that patch article put out there, because I think it did a really nice job of communicating publicly what a lot of people may have only heard pieces of in the past, and laying out what those alternatives are. So I am a civil engineer. I'm not a traffic engineer, as a lot of others aren't here. And the one thing I wanted to say is that, while I'm not a traffic engineer, I think what all engineers are trained to do is to find creative, cost-effective solutions to problems that face their customers or the public, whoever it is that the constituency that they're working with. I was responsible, I guess, for the Alternative 2 proposal, which was moving the signalization bar down from the northbound lanes in order to add in the access point to Arcadia. And, from my perspective, that was a different solution than the other alternatives that we had seen so far, and a way to really address both the access issues as well as the safety issues. And a big portion of the safety issues, besides the cars and vehicles that are going to be in that development, are the service vehicles. And we talked about the EMS issues that are being addressed. We have dump trucks, we have garbage trucks, we have snow plows, we have a lot of things that are going to be needing to get in and out of there. And the U-turn, while it does address, with weaving, some issues for people who want to go northbound and eventually out onto the bypass, it really doesn't address a lot of those issues for the larger vehicles. Alternative 2 does, and it does it in a way that's, I think, much safer. It's protected access. And the thing that I just wanted to comment on about the analysis that was done was, I threw a concept out there, and I was happy to see that it got incorporated into the alternative analysis. But what I don't think has been done, and I think what I'm advocating for, and I hope everybody, all the various stakeholders are interested in, is finding a, safe, cost-effective solution that's going to address the traffic issues as well as the access issues. And I think Alternative 2, as it was modeled, really took the existing intersection and moved the traffic signalization down. What it didn't do is it didn't add the second right-hand turn lane, which which Alternative 3 and Alternative 4 did. I didn't go to that level of detail when I put the concept out there to kind of re-engineer the whole thing, but and maybe if I was a traffic engineer, I would have recognized that without that additional second right turn lane, you're going to have queuing problems and backup problems on northbound Buck Road. And that's really what's, in my non-traffic engineer opinion, is what's addressing and improving the service levels for northbound traffic, is that second right turn lane. So, what I'm advocating for and asking for the board support on as really, I think, the powers that be relative to driving this process forward is, is that we get the right people together, whether it's, Jason and his folks from McMahon, to sit down with the appropriate interested parties and take another look at the various alternatives that we already have out there and figure out how to come up with the best optimized hybrid of whatever we have here that's going to really address all the issues that are out there. In my opinion, for a lot of the reasons that PennDOT came up with, Alternative 1, because it is so close to the intersection, is really a problem. And I think that's a difference, Phil, between, again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but the difference between like the Swamp Road entrance and exit point, it's halfway between 330 or, Alms House Road and the bypass over on Swamp Road. There's a lot of space between there for people to make a maneuver from one lane to the other. When you're talking about people that are moving at 55, if we're lucky, miles an hour on the bypass, and people coming out of that development at 0 miles an hour and then trying to shoot across to make a left-hand turn onto Sycamore Street, I think that's the concern, is that there's really not a lot of space to accelerate and get across in busy traffic times. And it is an issue on southbound Buck Road, but I think that's a 35 mile an hour, maybe 45 mile an hour posted speed limit. The traffic's not moving as fast there as it is on the bypass. But anyway, I do recognize this is separate. I know the development's going to be approved. I think, that chip has sailed. So now we want really the best win-win solution for the existing residents, the traveling public, the township, the builder, everybody, so we can get this done and get it done right, so that we're not really building something that we're going to have to address later. I've been to some of these meetings, and we talk about all the issues with Chick-fil-A queuing, and what are we going to do about that? Apparently that was not something that was envisioned at the time that was done, or somebody would have engineered a solution to that, and now we're trying to fix that now. We don't want to do this here when we can fix it now, and I don't think we're going to fix it with Alternative 2 without that second lane, but I do think we'll fix it, and we'll fix it in a way that's much safer for the traveling public if we make that change and model it that way, and see how it turns out. And again, I think, PennDOT's looking at those tables, and I looked at the tables, and if you're just looking at that, you would say absolutely Alternative 4 looks like the best choice for moving the traffic. But that's not all we're worried about here. We want to move the traffic, but to me, that falls subservient to the safety of the traveling public and the safety of the people who are going to be entering and exiting Jason's development, and the people who are going to be entering and exiting both Crown Point and Newtown Crossing. And to me, that's the prime consideration here. And if even after adding that next turn lane, option 2 still doesn't have quite the same performance levels as the U-turn does, I think we still got to, kind of take a leap of faith here as to, well, what's the best overall answer here. And, I'd like to be part of that. I offered that back in February when we were wrapping up the settlement agreement. Again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I would like to participate. I think I could fairly represent the interests of the communities. We did have a petition with over 500 signatures on it, and I think as an indication of the interest level that there is on the part of the community, which the folks seated behind the wall here are representing. I think that's a very, loud call to make sure that we do the right thing here and come up with a really good solution while getting this thing built. So that's all I wanted to say. Pardon me for the lengthy diatribe, but if anybody has any questions for me before I step down, be glad to take them. Otherwise, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else?
Dennis Schoner with Eagle Ridge. I've been involved with the developments from Arcadia 1 back in 2015, if not earlier. I agree it's two separate paths. The point of access, single point of access has always been an issue. My opinion is the bypass option gives you a second point of access. Because if there's ever a disruption on that service road, how are people going to get in and out of that development? So these are discussions that everybody points to. It's a PennDOT issue, and I keep on hearing PennDOT District 6. They're the authority having jurisdiction. But I requested that there is a way to take it up to the next level, to the highway safety standards, to have that evaluated. But it is a PennDOT issue for access. It's not the PRD. There's got to be a right answer, as Pete said, for that development. The township had zoned it as a planned residential development, and ultimately will be built somewhere. So this is, to me, is a bump in the road. The U-turn really is a big issue to me, and I know the people with the development. All the plans show a sedan that can make that U-turn. All the other trucks, all the other buses, all the other vehicles that head south on Buck Road will be turning onto Mill Pond. I doubt if they're going to weave over to go into Crown Point. Okay? And historically, in one of the testimonies, even the pastor, when he was asked how he gets out of there, he comes out, heads south on Buck Road, and turns in and just kind of meanders around the neighborhood and goes around and makes his U-turn. And he even made the statement when asked what he sees other parishioners doing. He says they do the same, and sometimes they just cut straight across Buck Road to get to the 413 bypass. Okay? That single point access has always been an issue. In my mind, the best way, which would give you a second point of access, is the in through the Buck Road and out through the other, directly to the bypass. But that's my opinion. That's a discussion hopefully we'll have soon with PennDOT, because I think, as Pete has said, we have to do the right thing for the township and especially for the people that use that intersection. Safety is a prime concern. PennDOT has all kinds of regulations for their HOPs that would require waivers for liability. Does the township have a chance to ask PennDOT for waivers for their liability on these bad decisions? So, it's going to be a very interesting meeting. I'm looking forward to it as an intervener status for PennDOT. I do want to participate in that meeting, as I put in the letter, and I'm looking forward to it. And I think there is a solution that can be made, but we do need PennDOT to be swayed, if you would, because it is in the best interest of the community. That's all. Thank you.
You. Anyone else have anything to say? Sure.
I'm not sure in all my babbling there if I kind of got to the punchline that I was trying to, which was really that while I do think the meeting with PennDOT is going to be important, and ultimately they're going to weigh in on their whatever is presented to them. And to me, I think what I would really like the support of the Board of Supervisors for is to request and ask, Jason and his folks, along with the appropriate folks from the township, as well as the homeowners association, to sit down and take another look and work with McMahon or whoever the right people are to evaluate and really come up with the best, alternatives, model them, and then ultimately present that to PennDOT with what we, think is going to be the best solution. So, in my opinion, and again, I don't know whether my opinion matters much, but I think, the folks here really have the authority, based on the way I read the settlement agreement, to sort of drive that AEP and, coming up with the alternatives. Ultimately, that is going to be reviewed, since they're state highways, by PennDOT. But, again, I want to be a part of that, and I hope that the supervisors will push for that to be done, because I think ultimately that's going to get us to the place that we need to get to. Thank you.
Mr. Ancona, I think you want to promote your alternative too, but you're saying that it needs some re-engineering and that you're not qualified to do that. How would that be presented to PennDOT? I mean, perhaps Arcadia just presented exactly what you suggested. Is that correct, in terms of the design of that alternative?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I didn't engineer it. I basically presented a concept. And I think you're right, John. It's, in looking at what Alternative 3 and Alternative 4 do with the northbound second lane there, I mean, to me, yes, I'm advocating for Alternative 2, because I think, it checks all the boxes in terms of safety, access, those types of things. But I think it has to stand on its own 2 feet, but I think it should be kind of an equal, at least on equal footing, in terms of evaluating the merits of that, and the second lane is the thing that makes the difference, as well as the programming of the signals themselves. One thing that I can't tell from the study that was done was whether they actually program the signals during high traffic times of the day to only change green, like every alternative signal and those types of things that they can do to manage the flow on the main thoroughfares. And basically people might have to wait two cycles to get out of Arcadia. They do that in other places where there's 5-way intersections with low flow.
But this is what wouldn't this be what a point of access study determines? If you were to add another lane, as you suggested, do all this fiddling with the timing?
Well, I understand what you're saying. I think my understanding with a point of access was basically a point of access onto the bypass from the property that they were developing, and that was, what PennDOT was basically looking for relative to the limited access highway. The alternatives were what I understood to be the access evaluation study. There's 4 alternatives, but that they had to ask for a point of access for
so those
an
alternatives,
additional point of access.
If I can ask our engineer, those alternatives, do not figure into a point of access study? They're not something to,
They do. So part of the point of access process is the evaluation of alternative solutions in addition
Okay.
to, the recommended or the suggested point of access location.
so it's not divided, you just don't look at one access and not the other when you do this point of access study. So, I mean, that's something we can talk to PennDOT about, I assume.
Yeah, I guess so, but I guess, from my perspective, if we basically look at the existing alternatives again, and basically alternative two, I think was not, it was evaluated as it was presented, and I presented it with
Right.
less than the full amount.
But I also heard you say that the PennDOT seemed to make decisions without having any data to support it, basically.
Well, I think that was before I saw all the details there. They basically commented on data that was presented by the people who did do all the
Aside from that
homework.
data, right.
And
Okay.
they modeled what they were given, which was, the existing intersection with the signal bar moved down, as opposed to me providing a lot of detailed information on, no, you got to have a second right turn lane, you got to program the traffic lights to optimize. I mean, I'm not a traffic engineer, but to me, that's what engineers, and if we sat down with McMahon again and said, how do we optimize each of these alternatives, and then model them and then see what turns out the best, and not just respect to traffic flow, but safety as well, and those types of things. To me,
Okay.
that's the best process that's going to get us to the right answer.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Jason Duckworth, Arcadia Land Company. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Ancona's comment. First of all, our traffic consultant, McMahon Associates, will be able to participate on either of the two dates proposed by PennDOT. So we look forward to participating fully in that conversation and contributing as we can. Mr. Ancona is correct, and that there is, in the second option, the design that was modeled didn't include the additional right turn lane. So I'm going to ask McMahon to model that and see if we can get that information before the meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Okay. It's been such a long time since you read the motion. Again, just, is Mr. Sander? Okay. I don't need the whole motion read, but no, I just want him to explain what we are voting on, so this way everybody is clear. Yeah, we'll hear him from the bathroom. No, we can't. Anybody have any jokes they want to tell? Or?
It's Rose, 215-263-1021.
So, okay, we'll go on the Atlantic City Expressway. All the Pennsylvania drivers, I'll even throw New York drivers in there going to and from AC. Left lane going 65 miles an hour, and I have to be stuck behind.
How fast do you think they should go?
They shouldn't be there to begin with.
You're like, New York, go back to your own state.
Literally.
All right, that's great. How fast do you think they should be going, though, really?
We'll call it like a nice 80.
A nice 80? What's the speed limit? You don't even know? You don't even know?
Okay, everyone, if we like to resume, I will ask Mr. Sander to go over what exactly the board will be voting on tonight. I don't know if you need to read the whole motion again, but it's just refresh our memories.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The motion requires Arcadia to comply with all of the most recent review letters from the township consultants, in addition to implementing a revised plan regarding the relocation of sidewalks and curbs so that the sidewalks can serve for support for the emergency services outriggers for their devices, firefighting devices. It also requires the township engineer to review and approve in writing the specifications for and the physical construction of those sidewalks to ensure that they will support the outriggers. The Homeowners Association declaration will include a plan depicting where parking is prohibited. They have to obtain will serve letters from the sewer and water authorities, pay all costs to the township for review as governed by the settlement agreement, and obtain all permits and approvals required from all agencies with jurisdiction except as otherwise governed by the settlement agreement. And that's where the two paths, I think, that you've heard from some of our public comment, some of our board comment this evening come in. The vote tonight is to approve the final subdivision and land development plan for this property. The other path is the need for the applicant to ultimately obtain a PennDOT highway occupancy permit for safe and efficient access to this development, which is a process that will proceed as a parallel, in a parallel manner with the construction of the development. But tonight the board is considering approval only of the final subdivision and land development plan as required by the settlement agreement, as laid out pursuant to the zoning and subdivision provisions set forth in the zoning agreement. 60 units, buffering, additional setbacks, considerations that Eagle Ridge and Newtown Crossing and the homeowners associations had requested and have been incorporated into the settlement agreement are all incorporated into the plan that's before the board tonight.
Thank you. That was, motion was made by Mr. Fisher, seconded by Mr. Oxley. Discussion has been made. I will call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. Passes 4-1. Thank you. Okay. All right, moving right along. Engineers report.
I have no items to report.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. Can you just give us an update on the Lower Darlington Road Trail project?
Yep, so as you know, the project was awarded at the last meeting. We're in the process of preparing contracts now that will go to the contractor, and the township will execute them. We're also finalizing any requirements needed through the grants that we've received for that, and then we'll move into that construction process.
Do you think that construction would start this year, soon, a month, 2 months from
I
now?
anticipate probably 2 more weeks in terms of doing the contracts, then we'll schedule a pre-construction meeting after that. So I anticipate, in the next month that there could be construction starting.
So the odds are pretty good that this will be completed this year, this calendar year?
Based on how we're looking at it now, yes.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was the road work. I know that Mr. Lewis had mentioned something about concrete work being started on the 30th, was it? And, but is there a schedule for the pavement of roads? Usually we have a schedule.
We don't have a schedule just yet. Once they have their concrete crews mobilized, they're going to give us that schedule.
And, again, it'll be done this year, probably.
Yeah, once they start, it should only take 4 or 5 weeks.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The lone item on our report is I request that the board make a motion to authorize the jointure solicitor to advertise a joint municipal zoning ordinance amendment deleting reference to performance subdivision in the introductory paragraph to the CM district. This ordinance, as Mr. Fiddler reported this evening, is a housekeeping amendment to implement a 2009 amendment to the zoning ordinance where performance subdivisions were removed from the CM district. In the language of the ordinance, reference to performance subdivisions still remains. This amendment would just remove that reference. It's a simple housekeeping amendment, and I would ask for a motion to authorize advertisement.
That motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions from the board? From the public? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes our report.
Okay. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General fund balance as of this evening is $5,121,889. Plan expirations before the board with no action required. We have Chief Hearn to give his July report. Chief Forsyth, not Chief Hearn.
All right, I always wanted to be the police chief. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I would like to present to you the July 2021 monthly report for the Fire Association and Emergency Services. We responded to 109 calls for service. We completed 47 township fire safety inspections. We completed 11 in Newtown Borough. Our new rescue truck arrived on July 9th. It was placed in service on August 13th. And we are going to be sending you folks an invitation. We're going to officially house our truck on October 6th. We picked a Wednesday night when you didn't have a board meeting, so we're looking forward to you being there. That'll start at 6 p.m., and the housing will actually take place at 7. July was a busy month for us. We completed several wet downs for the camp kids at the Park and Rec camps. The Park and Rec does a great job with those camps, and it's a pleasure for us to always be there to help them out with it. So that is the monthly report. Also, our Beer Fest is September 18th at the Stocking Works. If you'd like to attend, I'm sure there's tickets available, so the more the merrier. Not that I'll be there drinking beer with you.
And where's the information for that, Mr. Lewis? We have that on our...
It's on our
television.
website.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mary. I'm not really sure about all that technology.
NewtownBeerFest.com.
Yes.
And you can purchase tickets in there.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Very good.
So that's my report. If you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Any questions for the chief?
I have two definitions I need. What takes place at the housing of a truck?
It's normally an event where we officially put the truck in service, but we invite the elected officials that support us. The community will be invited. We'll have small refreshments at the beginning. We'll buy a nice bottle of champagne to break it. It's a tradition on the bumper,
Okay.
so that someone will be selected. Maybe it'll be Micah and put the first dent in the truck. So that's normally what a housing is. We are only going to invite our neighboring fire chiefs and their companies, and like I said, our elected officials in the community will be invited. It won't take long. It's a short ceremonial thing that the fire departments do when we get a new truck, and we don't buy a lot of new trucks, so it's a big deal for us, so we'll be more than happy for you to be there.
But October 6th is a little too cool for a wet down of Micah, for example.
It might work, though. They're
Yeah.
saying it's going to be hot in
Okay.
October, so.
Yeah. And that was my other question. A wet down is exactly that. It's like
A wet down is exactly that.
Kids get to
show
running
up
out
at
of the
camp
water.
in their bathing suits, and we
Yeah.
go and soak them for 15 minutes.
sounds like fun.
They're happy. We get to work our apparatus a little bit. The
Yep.
kids enjoy it. Park and Rec does a great job, so that's a big event for us during the
They
summer.
use the fire hose and knock these kids all around it.
Well,
I mean, that's pretty
It's
powerful.
funny you say that, because we use what we call a deck gun. It's on top of the truck, and we point it down at them.
Like going to a concert.
Listen, I think if a couple of my kids were there, I would try to take their legs out from under them, but I wouldn't do that to certainly our citizens' children, so. But it's a lot of fun. The kids enjoy it, and I think it's a good thing for Park and Rec.
Yeah, my son was in the lacrosse camp, and you guys did that for them. It was pretty awesome. They enjoyed it a lot.
Anything else for the chief? Thanks, chief.
Very good, thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you, Chief. I just want to mention real quick that the board did meet in executive session prior to this meeting, prior to the regular meeting, to discuss matters of pending litigation. And I would like to introduce our new assistant manager officially to the board and to the public. Catherine Mcgovern joined us on the 16th and has been getting up to speed faster than I expected her to, and doing a fantastic job so far. So,
And she's still
Welcome,
showing
Mrs.
up every day, right?
So far.
Yes, she has tolerated me for a week and a half now, and so we'll hope it continues.
Excellent. Welcome aboard.
Thank you very much. I look forward to working with everyone here and serving the Newtown community.
Excellent. Thank you. Is that it, Mr. Lewis?
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Minutes, bills list, and...
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I had a question for Mr. Lewis. I've been mentioning for some time about the budgeting process for 2022. Have you been able to move that process up a little bit so we can have more time to look at it and discuss?
We are currently working on the 2022 budget. We're getting the figures in. We're starting to work with some of the schedules. A lot of the big information, like the MMOs and the assessed value of Newtown Township, we don't have yet. So there's some significant information that we still need to be able to move forward. Currently, the timeline, unless the board wants to do something differently, would be a presentation in the October work session. I think it's October 18th.
So still the same schedule?
Still on the same schedule.
Would anybody else like to see that sooner other than
Well,
myself?
I don't know about seeing the numbers sooner, and you seem to be saying that, you require more information. But as I mentioned before, Doylestown, for example, has been having its budget meetings since at least May, where, the departments come in and make a kind of a report. on what they think they need for the coming year. For example, they had the Public Works people come in and give an inventory about all the roads, which roads are in need of immediate repair, which roads have been worked on recently, and it gave them an idea of, well, you know, we need to really do something with the roads. But I know, for example, the chief has come in here last year and talked about his needs without necessarily going into numbers, except for, you know, he needs this and that, or he would like to have. So I consider that part of the budget process. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, Kyle? Or?
I'd like to get the presentation from the manager prior to the middle of October.
I see, with all the numbers and everything.
Any,
I can speak, I mean, it has been something that the Finance Committee has been kind of advocating for as well, that if we could do it a little sooner. I know maybe the end of September.
that's pretty close to October. But anyway, okay. Anything else for the manager?
No, so there's no buy-in from anybody else on that idea? Doesn't seem like it.
I think if we're doing it too soon, we don't have enough figures coming in, EIT figures, transfer tax figures. I see nothing wrong. I do think we do have department heads that always come before us and give us their wish list, so to speak. And, but I mean, again, I'll just go back to years ago. The budget process started the day after November election, and we still got a budget passed. But that was a long time ago. So you know, we get it in October. Every meeting we have time to discuss it. I just know prior, when it came up for discussion, I never heard any discussion. So maybe we better be better prepared starting October as a board to start dissecting that budget, because we got October, we got November, and we got December to make our decisions on what happens with that budget. Well, for me, I think, you know, I haven't met the new Parks and Rec director. I haven't. Her office is here. I know, Phil, I know. But the public also hasn't met her and heard what she had to say about her plans or wishes. I know the Public Works director was here just once. Maybe he could come here again, and we can ask some more questions. To me, that's kind of important, but, you know, I think that could help me get better prepared for when the numbers do come by, to better analyze, you know, what the numbers mean.
Okay. Mr. Lewis, how much more do you need in terms of making sure that a budget could be put together?
Can I make a suggestion? Let's get on with the agenda, and this could be brought up under old business.
Sure.
And we could discuss it till 11 o'clock tonight, or whatever you guys want to do. So, Mr. Mack?
Minutes. I make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 11, 2021 Board of Supervisors meeting.
Have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions from the board on the minutes? From the public? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0.
With regard to the August 25, 2021 bills list, I move to approve our payment of bills according to the bills list dated August 25, 2021, totaling $271,470.20.
Motion to have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. Any questions from the board? From the public on the bills list? Seeing none, I call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0.
Okay, finally, I move to approve the interfund transfers as per the bills list of August 25th, 2021, totaling $242,800.
Do I have I have a motion, do I have a second? Motion is second. Any questions from the board, from the public? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Mr. Mack. We'll go into our second session of public comment. Anyone who has anything to say in regards to anything now, please come up to the podium.
John the April, Newtown Grant. Years ago, what Mr. Mack was talking about, before this building was ever built, the old building, before Johnny Mack was awake in this township, the department managers would come to the budget hearing, and they were here for the supervisors to ask questions and all that stuff, what they wanted and all that stuff. Why that went by the wayside, I don't know, but that did happen in the past. Another thing, I know you guys' hands were tied with the Arcadia deal. Bad decisions, bad actions by our solicitor with Mr. Van Louvenet. No wonder why they call him the best land lawyer in Bucks County. I mean, it was like a professional going against an amateur. Terrible. Thank you very much.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay, seeing none, moving right along. Okay, now we're old business. Anyone want to discuss old business?
Can I talk about something that was on the agenda at the last meeting, the communications expert liaison? I'd like to.
Sure.
I don't know exactly what that means, but I've been thinking about it, and I think, obviously, if we have somebody like that or a couple of people, I'm thinking they would be supervisors, because I know volunteers out there in the, for example, the Technology and Communications Committee don't have the time or the data information necessary to go out and do the kinds of things that I thought a liaison should do. For example, we need to discuss technical details of proposals made by vendors, such as Video Gold, which was some data from the manager's report as to upgrading the audio-visual system here. And that would be a task. Another important task of a communications expert liaison might be in developing requests for proposals that had to go out for competitive bidding, for example. A liaison could also do research regarding what other townships are doing with their audiovisual and hybrid meetings or whatever to improve communications. And so I just thought these were a few suggestions. And I think, if we wanted to discuss that at some point, I'd be interested in being a liaison, but maybe I would ask if there was another member of the board who could be a joint liaison. I know that Mr. Davis has some technical background and was involved with the technology committee. I don't know if he would be interested, but I think that's something that we should think about. And in regard to the audiovisual, I don't want to get into the detail of what Video Gold has put up there, but in terms of doing a hybrid type of meeting, I was going to suggest that we have a phased approach. We don't have to do everything at once. I know, for example, I don't know if these speakers are currently working. Does anybody know? Are they amplifying? Just barely. So one of the phased approaches is to improve the audio in this room so that these speakers may be working better. I know they were working very, very well at the last zoning hearing board meeting in August 18th. I don't know if the wizard in the booth up there was here to make that work, but I know we can do it, I just don't know why it's not working tonight, for example, as it was working at the zoning hearing board meeting. So with regard to hybrid meetings, we don't have to have, all the committees be able to implement that. I suggest we start with the Board of Supervisors meeting, and I know that this has been done in other towns. Until they get it working correctly, they will move ahead after that with other committees. So with regard to what Kirsten Zolfall said, we also need a way for committee members to attend virtually, and one of the easiest and best ways to do that right off the bat is with what she recommended was a professional conference phone. But that phone would work only if the sound in the room, the speakers were working properly with the microphones. And I know that at the zoning hearing board meeting, there were several microphones out there, and they all worked beautifully, except Mr. Van Louvenet, something was going on. I think he's a little bit radioactive, and it was a lot of static when he was close to his microphone. So other than that, it worked really beautiful. I don't know what went on there. I'd like to learn more about that, and that's another thing a liaison could do is, for example, talk. I haven't been up in that room for many years. I was up there once and got introduced to the equipment. I would like to, again, talk to Video Gold about, what the plans might be and, what our equipment needs are so that when and if it comes to a time to make a decision, we be better informed, I think. So that's what I'm trying to say, a phased approach to hybrid meetings. I'm not advocating that all our Board of Supervisors stay home and attend virtually. That's not my priority. My priority would be that residents can attend and participate in the Board of Supervisors meeting virtually or in person. They would have the option to do that. And we need a phased approach where we don't have to spend $35,000 right out of the gate when we're not quite sure how whatever is being proposed by Video Gold is going to work properly and according to what our needs are. And we haven't gotten a whole list of what our needs really are. So anyway, my idea is I think a communications expert liaison might be helpful.
All right, thank you, sir. It's not public comment, but since you're up there, go right ahead.
I just wanted to report that it seems to vary in terms of sound quality where you're sitting. I sat in the front row tonight. It was better, although there were people I could barely hear. But 2 weeks ago when I was here, I sat in the middle of the room, and it was all the voices except the voice of the solicitor were indistinguishable to me. So I wanted you to have that as a feedback.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for indulging me.
No problem. Thank you. Old business?
I just wanted to follow up with that.
Sure.
And what Ms. Zolfo suggested as an early fix. Can we get a new phone for in here that would help with that situation?
Theoretically, yes, we can look at getting a new phone. These phones are harder to get because they don't make them anymore. The system is as old as this building, I believe. So we have to sort of buy them from eBay. They don't manufacture them anymore, but we can look into it.
Really? Maybe we can buy one from Wrightstown. They have two of them. I don't know why they need two in that room. I'm sure we can get one from them.
The other thing we have done is we have put a sort of a committee laptop up here to be able to be used for Zoom meetings if necessary. So that may be another option. That doesn't really solve the problem with the acoustics in here.
Right.
But it is another option that we have here.
And we want to do the acoustics fix at some point anyway.
Another thing on the same note, we could we be streaming this meeting like we were talking about school board doing on YouTube? I mean, people are cutting the cable, people don't have the cable TV, they can't watch these
We have
meetings.
tried to, in the beginning of the pandemic, when everybody went virtual, we did try to get the video up onto YouTube, and then we would have provided a link to that from our website. However, we have a .gov email address, website address, which has different security provisions on it, so we couldn't get the patch to work. I know there's ways that you can work around that you have to essentially design a patch to be able to not recognize the .gov from the YouTube address, is from what it was explained to me.
Might be worth, I think it's worth looking into, see if we can get that working, or even use it, make up an
Well,
email address.
the county actually uses Facebook.
Yeah, I
I've
think
watched
they
their
use
meetings
Facebook
on
Live.
Facebook.
right.
I mean, maybe that's a possibility also. John, next time you go to a jointure meeting, will you steal one of those phones from right side?
Absolutely.
Why don't you put it on camera so they don't know you're coming?
Put it in your pocket or something, or under your coat.
I refuse to be your accomplice.
Anyone else with old business? Mr. Oxley, you were asking a question prior. Did you want to continue with that? You were asking the manager something.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lewis, in terms of what Mr. Davis was asking, how much more or how much time will it take in order to get those numbers that you need to actually provide a proper preliminary budget?
It depends on several factors. It depends on the county updating the assessed value in the beginning of September. It depends on our actuarial consultants getting us our proper MMOs for next year. And it depends on a series of information from our healthcare providers on how much healthcare is going to cost, et cetera, for next year.
Have you asked about getting that information already?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they know they have to get it to us.
And do they have a certain amount of time, or could you ask them to get it to you sooner?
I can inquire where it is, but they typically give it in the middle of September, and then we import all the information.
Sure, because that's during like open enrollment periods.
Yeah, there's open enrollment periods, and they also have to do the assessment of the township each year.
Sure. And that takes some time before those numbers can actually get to their
They have
clients or customers.
They have to determine their liabilities.
And healthcare costs for our employees is a pretty big number, I would imagine.
Yeah, it's a significant number.
So we want to make sure that's in the budget in the right way. Okay, thank you.
Okay. I do have a old business item. As you know, for the last 1,000 years, we've been trying to negotiate a fee schedule for the fire agreement with the borough. We have gotten correspondence back from them. I don't know if you gentlemen are happy with that correspondence, but tonight I'd like to make a motion that we approve that fee schedule that Mr. Sander provided us last meeting. And if, Mr. Sander, you have that, maybe you can go over some of the particular points.
Give me a moment, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'll make a motion. Does anyone want a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, have a motion now. Now go ahead, Mr. Sander.
Hold, please. You have it? Thank you. I just got it on my computer. Several meetings ago, the board asked how we could begin to charge Newtown Borough and potentially other municipalities to whom we lend fire services. And I thought that the best way to do that would be to adopt a fee schedule amendment to the township's regular fee schedule to add that fee, but we needed to be able to substantiate that fee if it was challenged. And we had the assistance of Chief Forsythe, we had the assistance of the Finance Department, and calculations were performed based on the amount of time that the Newtown Township Emergency Services Department spent on calls in Newtown Borough, and that number was determined to be 18% of the time that they're out there doing their firefighting, fire service calls. 18% of them were in the borough. We multiplied 18% by the budgeted amount in the township budget for this year, which was $1,384,873. That fee comes to $249,277.14 for 2021, payable monthly, and we included that fee in this fee schedule amendment. We also, to be fair to Newtown Borough, didn't single them out, although they are the only municipality to which Newtown Township Emergency Services provides primary fire service. We also do assist other local fire departments in their fire service calls, and we added a fee for the year to be calculated by multiplying the time spent within each of those municipalities by the Emergency Services Department by the budgeted amount, and that fee shall be, according to this fee schedule, be calculated after services are rendered based on the fact that such services rendered to other municipalities are much less frequent than such services rendered to Newtown Borough, and there is no history of the amount of time spent in those municipalities in order to calculate a fee, but the fee is being established nonetheless and can be calculated after the fact. So that fee is contained in the fee schedule. We also calculated an hourly fee for time spent by members of the Newtown Emergency Services Department for reviewing land development and other plans for fire safety issues and responding to fire code violations in other municipalities. And that is based on the average hourly salary and benefits of a firefighter in Newtown Township's Emergency Services Department, and that will be payable after the fact, after those services are rendered, upon receipt of an invoice from the township, net 30 days. That per hour fee is $45.17 per hour. In addition, as we do with most of our other fees, there is a 12% administrative fee added to all fees established by this resolution. And for late payments, they are charged a service charge of 1.5% per month added to balances over 30 days old. And that's what this resolution does. The resolution was presented to the board. There were some members of the board who wanted to see if we could make one sort of last-ditch effort to reach out to the borough. We did that. The borough agreed that they would get me, by close of business last week, a proposed agreement. We received that agreement. That agreement bases a fee, a proposed annual fee on population, which this board and our Emergency Services Department has said is not a relevant factor to considering a fee, because it has nothing to do and no rational relationship with the number of calls made for fire services in the borough, nor the time spent by Newtown Township Emergency Services folks in the borough. So again, there may still be an opportunity to respond to that agreement, tell them that it's got to be based on something other than population, that we've got to have real numbers about the time spent and the amount of resources that we devote to Newtown Borough in calculating an annual fee, or motion's been made and seconded to adopt this resolution and send them their first monthly bill. I suspect that if that happens, there might be a challenge to our ability to levy this fee. But you know what? As the chairman has repeatedly said, Sometimes you can't just let month to month to month to month to year go by without taking some bold steps to try to recoup the money that you're laying out to service another municipalities' fire services. So that's where this stands.
Personally, I don't think you have an agreement from the board to base any numbers upon services rendered. This is something that you've come up with without discussing all those details with the board. I don't remember voting on that.
You didn't. You tabled it.
So this resolution, I guess, empowers us to send a bill to the borough. And I don't think that we need to talk about, what percentage of the calls go to the borough, blah, 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 because they're always going to play that game about, percentages and manipulate the numbers. I'm constantly have said that we have to pay firefighters whether they go on call or not, okay? They have to be there and be ready. And that's what we spend money on. And that's part of that has to be carried by the borough, no matter how much percentage of calls we make to the borough. And, I know from my speaking with Chief Forsythe is, they got to pay for at least one firefighter and the salary and benefits and so on. And, that's my position. So I don't agree with the percentages, 18%, 16%. They're going to win. They're going to constantly battle you on that
That's why
point.
we're going to send them this, to send them a message that, in my opinion, they haven't been negotiating in good faith. So far, they've been these people are paying for our firefighters to go out into the borough on our dime, of which this board raised taxes last year, so that they can get fire protection from our paid firefighters for free.
I'm not saying not to charge
So
them.
18% has been calculated based on the numbers that Mr. Sander just said. To say something about population is totally asinine. I don't care if there's one resident in Newtown Borough. If that resident calls our firefighters 100 times a day, they shouldn't be paid. We shouldn't be paid for 100 times a day.
And I don't care if we make one call to the borough, we still have to pay the firefighters, whether or
Our
not.
firefighters with our residents' tax
No,
money,
I'm
of
saying,
which maybe next
you-
year, of this year, raise taxes again
You're
to pay
putting
for an
words into
additional
my mouth. I'm
firefighter.
not saying.
Well, I think you both
And I think
agree that
agreeing,
there's supposed to be a charge, right? I think
Yes.
all right, so we're good there.
Right.
Let's,
Well,
And
so
does
Mr. Mack is contesting that the 18% is not valid.
well,
I didn't say it wasn't valid. I said we shouldn't base the pricing based on a percentage of calls. We should base it on the fact that we have to have firefighters ready and pay them no matter how many calls they make.
But if they're making 18% of the calls to the borough, why aren't we charging them for 18% of our time that is being spent there?
And the fee schedule here has incorporated that.
I know that.
Yep.
Mr. Mack doesn't believe in the percentage.
I believe in the percentage. I don't believe it's a point to negotiate because we tried that and they keep coming back with their own different numbers.
Well, that's why we're going to send them a message with this fee schedule. Right now, we haven't done, right now, we're the boy that cried wolf and not getting anything done. And they are serving their people very well. I have to commend them because they keep getting free fire service from us. We just keep giving it to them because they keep saying, oh, let's talk about it next month. They're pretty smart. We're ones not getting paid.
So
I don't understand.
I know I have the reputation of always being the nice guy. I will vote for this. But it just doesn't preclude them coming back to us and saying.
No, they could come back and negotiate
We had a
something.
little better.
Yeah, exactly.
This most recent.
wasn't their
back to
recommendation?
us, what they came back to us was a better was like $12,000 better than it was the last time, so.
So should we keep going until the 12,000 keeps?
Well,
In the meantime,
an
they
agreement would
keep
probably be
getting,
preferred.
they keep getting free service from it.
Yeah.
You guys are giving them free service. The people are giving them free service.
And we're not, so.
Well,
I'm just
what's the
saying.
original suggestion, was it covered two firefighters? So, and what was that, 300,000?
This barely covers 2 firefighters.
Exactly, so I mean, we're kind of,
So if we have to hire another firefighter next year,
but there's increasing schedule
the
in that as
thought
well.
within the budget, which comes earlier, is that maybe by October, this board will have to decide if taxes have to go up for that personnel. It's the brutal truth, gentlemen.
And it's the truth all the way around the county.
Well, the thing about it is that they don't want to pay out anymore because they're worried about raising taxes over there.
Well, here's their.
And that's not our
I'll
problem.
tell you the balancing act. The $249 that we're saying to pay us,
Mhm.
or the $5 million it will cost them to establish their own fire department. How will they present that to their constituents? Gee, we could have got it for $249 from, $249,000 from the township. Let's just pay $5 million. How many mills is that? That'll go up.
There's something I think we're missing here, too. We don't own any of the fire trucks.
We own the property that the fire trucks are contained in.
We don't own that either.
We own the property. We
The
own
buildings?
the property, yes.
We
No,
don't own the
property.
building.
But we can.
And we don't own
we-
the trucks.
We can charge them $10,000 a month for the property. that
They
it's
probably
on.
just go back to the borough.
And it's the Newtown Fire Association that owns it.
Right, that's what I'm saying. We don't own any capital equipment here.
We
So
have
if
a
we
lot-
sever those ties and we start drawing lines in the sand, we're gonna have to start putting a boatload of money out for
We
equipment.
have a lot of space within the Public Works Department that can house 2 engines.
And you gotta buy one.
We can take.
Wait, so
we-
the borough owns those trucks?
We can
NFA
take-
owns all
we
the
can
trucks.
take
As
the-
NFA,
we can take the
a part of the,
loan out
I
and
didn't know
buy
that NFA was part of the
trucks
borough. Is that
And
accurate?
just service the
No,
township.
okay.
I'm just saying, if you start drawing lines in the sand, you have to be considering that's where this could go.
Right now, they've drawn the line in the sand, and we're the ones afraid to cross it.
I think the sentiment, I agree with the sentiment. We need to protect our taxpayers. That should be paramount. I'm just not in favor of sending them a bill. I think we need to work it out, as difficult as it might be. That's where I am on it.
Anyone else have any comment?
I think you gentlemen have been at this for quite a long time and have gotten nowhere until now. And I think that it's important that we move forward in this direction. Granted, I know putting lines in the sand, and I didn't know the borough owned those trucks. Is that accurate?
Well, it's NFA, the Fire Association.
So the borough controls
This
NFA?
has nothing to
No,
do with
all
the
right.
NFA. It has
Correct.
to do with the borough.
All
Let's
right.
not confuse things here.
Okay, no, I'm just making sure. I want to be clear because
We're
we
not doing anything to harm the NFA.
okay,
It's the borough that should be paying their fair share.
absolutely.
Why don't we send Mr. Lewis to be their manager? Why not? Why not? Mr. Lewis could go be the manager, we could share him, and we'll pay him.
I don't think anyone's disagreeing with what you're saying about our money paying for it. I just don't like the idea of saying, here's a bill, shoving it down our throat. That's all I'm saying.
Point two.
Well, Mr. Fisher and Mr. Mack have been negotiating with them for quite some time, right?
Before that, it was
And
Ms.
Chief
Dix.
Forsythe,
Before
and-
that, it was other people.
And it's been,
The only one that's been being manipulative here has been the borough. And in my opinion, I commend them because they've been taking care of their citizenry more than we have. And if we want to, listen, this is my last approach to this. If we want to continue this contribution to the borough, go right ahead and do it.
well, it's unfair to the taxpayers of Newtown Township, the residents, excuse me.
Well,
And when we've met with the borough, they've expressed
come on.
that they know they owe us something.
Oh, Dennis, if you lend me $100 and every time you come to collect it, I say, hey, you know what, I'll give it to you next week. And you come back and the week, and I say, hey, I'll give it to you next.
You've been at it longer than me.
I'll give it to you
for
next
sure.
week. Well, I mean, I don't know how much longer that could go on.
We have to break a couple of legs.
Let the record show, I did not say that.
Yeah, I'm from Brooklyn, so, anyway,
Any comments from the public?
We have a motion and a second. Yeah.
I have one comment. Here's my comment. I see that this speaker system is actually working just fine when you guys are heated enough to speak up. We hear everybody. So I'm thinking right now that if you just give the passion that you have for this to your microphones and speak up, that this will serve just fine. It's an eye-opening experience that I just had right here.
You're saying we're
Now we hear you all.
Are you saying we're fired up, or we need to be fired
I'm
up?
saying yes, you need to be fired up more, I guess, in order to hear you. Thank you for your indulgence.
All right, have a motion and a second. Discussion has been made, open to the public. Call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Mr. Mack? I didn't hear you.
I'll say aye.
Okay, passes 4-1. Mr. Sander, get that over to the borough. Also, I'd like you to address the insulting email that we received from their solicitor. I think that deserves a response, basically insulting the township and more likely the Board of Supervisors too. You know, it's nice to get free service from us and then insult us in an email. So if you can address that, that would be appreciated.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
How is he supposed to address that? Are you trade insults or what?
No, just basically tell them what the situation is.
Okay.
I mean, Mr. Sander.
I took it in the spirit of negotiations back and forth. I didn't take personally.
I hear you, Dennis. Any new business? Any need for an executive session?
No, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Without objection, we're out of here. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.